Everything you need to know when buying vintage Chanel. Hello, welcome back to Classics with a Quirk, where we talk about contemporary and luxury designer items and brands with a touch of silliness. This is the kind of content you find interesting. Please do like this video and subscribe for more of it. Thank you. If you've been on my channel before, you probably already know that I have a love for vintage Chanel pieces. I've been collecting them for quite some time. I think that they're beautiful. I love the patina that they can get, and I love the interesting and different styles that Chanel has done over the years. Buying vintage bags has also been much more in trend recently, as people want to reduce, reuse, recycle, give new life to older things, and also there is something to be said for the fact that buying new and boutique can be very, very expensive nowadays. That's not to say that buying vintage can't also be expensive, because we are talking about luxury items here, but generally you are looking to save several $1,000s if you're going to be buying a pre-loved piece or a vintage item. For those of you who might already be purchasing vintage Chanel or maybe contemplating your very first vintage Chanel purchase, I wanted to make a guide today about things to keep in mind when purchasing a pre-loved piece. Now, I'm very pleased to say that this video is in fact sponsored by Buyee. Buyee is an online Japanese proxy buying service that allows you to buy things through their website on Japanese eBay, Japanese Mercari, and Japanese Rakuten. So it's a way to buy items from Japan through their third-party proxy service. I'm always really excited when Buyee wants to work with me because I do utilize their service fairly regularly. I do purchase a lot from them, and I'll link a couple of unboxings that I have to share with you about pieces I've bought from them previously. And the nice thing about Buyee is it lets you look at so many different varieties of vintage styles and bags, not only just for Chanel, but for Louis Vuitton, Dior, Fendi, Salvatore Ferragamo. They just have a lot of variety. Japan is a very big consumer of luxury goods, and they tend to want to cycle through their items fairly frequently, so a lot of items move on the Japanese website. So you're generally going to be able to find more on Japanese eBay or Mercari or Rakuten than you are going to be able to find through regular eBay or even through third-party websites like Fashionphile or Rebag. There's just so much more out there that you can find through websites like Buyee. I did previously make a very in-depth video on how to utilize Buyee, so I'll link that video for you as well if you're interested in learning more about it. And I'm also going to put a sign-up link in my description box. If you use my sign-up link, you'll get 2,000 yen off of your first purchase if you haven't purchased with them before. Thank you again to Buyee for sponsoring this section of the video, and now to get into my guide. So one of the first things you want to keep in mind when you're purchasing vintage Chanel is what the shape of the bag looks like. You're going to look at structure, and you're also going to want to look at the quilts. Vintage Chanel bags are of excellent quality and make, and they can have beautiful structure. For instance, this is my vintage Chanel Jumbo. It is a 3 series from 1995, I believe. And look at it, the structure is wonderful. It can stand up on its own. It is a beautiful, beautiful piece. And there are plenty of beautiful pieces with excellent structure, but bags can still be prone to sagging or being misshapen, especially depending on how they were stored. And the thing that you want to keep in mind is if you're buying a vintage Chanel, really, I suggest, especially if it's your first one, that you want to buy something that's beautiful and that you're really going to love, not something that necessarily needs a lot of work. Because while some places, like for instance leather thrifts, can restructure a bag or reshape it, if you have a bag that's really, really misshapen, it's not going to be to the full glory of a bag that already had structure in it. Structure loss is something that can be fixed to a point, but if you can, I would recommend going with a bag that doesn't have as much structure loss, even if it's a really good deal. It might end up being more trouble than it's worth. In the same kind of vein of structure, I also want to talk about quilting. Now, most people, when they think of Chanel bags, they think of the beautiful puffy quilts, the diamond quilting. The thing about the quilting, though, is there actually are 3 different kinds of quilting that you're going to come across when you're looking for vintage Chanel. There are flatter quilted bags, bags that were made with quilts that were actually flatter than the puffy quilts we know today. The puffy quilt bags that are so coveted, for instance, vintage Diana with the beautiful puffy quilts, and then deflated quilts. Deflated quilts are puffy bags or bags that were made with puffy quilts that then have dimpling and dips in them. And I think that there's something very beautiful about the flatter quilted pieces. I think that they look very, very nice. And the way that the flatter quilts lie, you get this beautiful sheen of the patina that really shines through. But some people don't like the dimpled quilting effect. So when you have deflated quilts, they look different from flatter quilts. You'll see a dimpling in them versus just a flatter style. You can't, in essence, repuff a quilt. So a bag that was made with flatter quilts, that's how it was made. The quilts were supposed to be flat and they'll be beautiful that way. But if you have a puffy bag that then has deflation in it, the quilts become dimpled, you're not able to depuff that. And that can really bother some people. I know that some people don't like the look of deflated puffy quilts. So it's something that you might want to keep in mind. If you're looking for a bag, if you see flat quilts that don't look like they have dimpling, that bag was probably made with flatter stitching, usually older styles, 1 series, 2 series, 3 series. 5 series up are usually puffier bags, but those are the ones that are prone to dimpling. And once you have a dimpled bag, you can't undimple it. So it's just something to keep in mind when looking at vintage bags. Of course, we do want to talk about corner wear and wear to the leather. This is pretty important because once leather is worn away, you can't really put it back on. You can paint over corners that are worn away to disguise the look of the worn leather. But once leather is ripped or torn or the interfacing on, say, a corner is exposed, it's a little harder to actually fix in terms of leather repair. Mostly you're going to have people paint over it to at least disguise the fact that there is a wear in it. When you look at corners of bags especially, you'll notice discoloration, scuffs, or lighter markings. So it'll look lighter. Especially on a black bag, the scuffs might look grayish. They might even have white peeking through, which is the interfacing underneath. If you've got a color bag, for instance, a red bag, you might have a different color of red peeking through, exposing a sublayer underneath. In general, when you see scuffs like this, people will often, as I said, repaint the corners. So that's something to keep in mind when looking at the listing too. If you see that the corners are touched up or repainted, that might be because they are disguising a scuff. And if they are disguising a scuff with paint, that means that the bag is still prone to more wear in that area faster. It'll just be an increased wear and tear. Speaking of painting, by the way, and this is something I really wanted to touch on and make a note about because this is something that's quite important to me. One of the things I love about vintage Chanel bags is the beautiful leather and the patina that they can get. And once you paint a bag, you lose that patina, you lose that beautiful coloring, and you usually lose some of the softness of the leather as well. Now, hopefully, if you're buying from a seller, they will disclose that the bag has been colored, and often they do, but sometimes they might not know, or sometimes they don't disclose that. So there are a couple different ways that you can tell whether or not a bag has been recolored or repainted completely. First of all, if the bag is a darker color, you're going to see that it has a much more matte effect. Especially for older bags that should have a patina and a shine, a bag that has a matte finish is most likely a painted bag. This isn't always the case, but that is something that generally I see. A matte finish on an older piece is a pretty clear tell that the bag has been recolored. On lighter colored bags, another way to tell is to look at the stitching. If you have, for instance, a beige bag, the stitching should be a lighter color than the actual color of the leather. So usually it's going to be a lighter color beige or even a contrast white stitching, as you can see in the picture here. That is a bag where the color is original. When you have a painted or dyed bag, they're going to usually color over the stitches as well as the leather itself. When a bag is recolored, it is very difficult to avoid coloring the stitches as well. So generally when a bag needs to be repainted, the entire bag is repainted in part to also disguise the fact that some part of the stitches have to be recolored too. So if you see on this beige Chanel bag, first of all, you can see how matte it looks. Like it's not as shiny as the other one at all. The patina is gone. You also will see that the stitches themselves are a very dark beige color, almost the same color as the bag itself. That is a pretty sure sign that the bag has been repainted. And as I said before, for me, painting a bag really detracts from the beauty of it and also just detract from the value. A lot of people don't want to have painted bags, so once a bag is recolored, like they won't have anything to do with it, and I'm one of those people. So if you're looking for a bag also for resale value, investment value, a painted bag is just generally worth less. On that note, if you are buying a bag and you're willing to buy a painted bag, you should be paying less too, because you shouldn't be paying as much for a painted bag as one that is not painted. Color transfer, of course, is something to look out for on lighter bags, and color transfer is one of the reasons why bags do get repainted in the first place. So sometimes if you have a bag with a little bit of color transfer, it's like, will you live with that color transfer and be happy with it, or would you rather have the bag recolored? Me personally, I would be happy to have a bag that has a little bit of color transfer, especially on the back or on the corners, because I don't really see that much, so I don't really mind as much. And I would prefer, if I had to pick between a color transfer bag, a little bit of color transfer, and a bag that has been recolored to hide the color transfer, I'd probably pick the color transfer on the back if I had to pick. I mean, I'd prefer to have neither, but if I was choosing between the two, a painted bag is my bottomest choice, my most bottom choice. If you really like the feel of leather, the touch of it, and the patina that older bags can gain, I would really avoid painted bags if at all possible. And for lighter colored bags, if you do have a little bit of color transfer on the corners, like the corners can be touched up and I don't worry about those as much, the bottom as well, even the back for small areas, but I would prefer to leave the bag in its actual state with a little bit of color transfer on the back or on the bottom than retouching it at all. Another much beloved part of vintage Chanel bags is the beautiful hardware. Vintage Chanel bags were plated with an alloy that contained 24 karat gold, which is how you get this beautiful, vibrant, rich, deep gold color, this very, very yellow gold. And see, you can see here that mine has some beautiful gold to it. It's not worn off at all. Go through the pictures to see what the hardware looks like too. If the chains are very, very tarnished, hardware can be replated, not by Chanel, but by a place like Leather Surgeons. They will replate the hardware for you to match the color of the original bag. And I believe that Leather Surgeons does replate with 24 karat gold alloyed hardware, but don't quote me on that. I just think so. So you can get the hardware replated, but some of the beauty of the bag is in the hardware. So I would recommend looking for hardware that still has that rich gold to it. And if you can get a bag that has the hardware and not have to have any work done on the bag, that's what I would go for really, because part of the beauty is the hardware and that beautiful contrast. So I would recommend looking at the hardware too and making sure that it doesn't have tarnish, or at least only has this amount of tarnish that you're comfortable with. Another important thing I want to touch on that I don't see talked about a lot is the interiors of the bags, because those obviously are a very important part of the bag, but you don't really see them unless you own the bag yourself. You're not looking at them from the inside. So it's not something I see touched upon a lot, but it is very important. Chanel vintage bags generally have two types of interiors. They have a gauze grain lining interior, a fabric interior, which is often on older bags, 0 series, 1 series, occasional 2 or 3 series. And then they have the leather lined interiors, which we generally see on most bags. And it's often the burgundy interior for older bags because they still have that contrast in them. But what you don't hear about the leather interior is that it can get sticky, flake, and peel. This is something you really want to pay attention to. If you see a bag, you want to look at the pictures of the inside too and see what the pockets look like, what the inside parts look like, because again, the leather can stick to itself, like the colored leather can stick to itself, pull apart, and then it'll flake and peel. And that is not great. It's not great for the integrity of the bag. It's not great for the structure and the interior inside. It's not great for the fact that the leather is already breaking down. And so that's something that you really want to avoid if at all possible. You can get that part like basically painted over, like colored over to sort of hide the fact that it's happening, but it is something that I would avoid if possible. Remember, you're buying something that you want to be very special, and unless you're buying a project bag, like something you want to fix up, you want something that you can enjoy kind of immediately upon getting it. And it's worth making sure that it's in good condition, and the pocket and the interior of the bag counts as the good condition. The back pocket of the bag, the Mona Lisa pocket, if the bag comes with a Mona Lisa pocket, like this one does, also can be sticky, so you want to just check the inside here too to make sure that there isn't any flaking. And generally, Buyee, for instance, if you're buying through Buyee, is really good about putting in pictures like that. A lot of the sellers will show you if there is a detail that you need to be keeping in mind, like a sticky interior. In terms of fabric-lined bags, an important thing to note is that all older Chanel items are supposed to come with a serial number inside the bag. They come with a serial number and an accompanying serial authenticity card that the numbers match. That's something that Chanel has done up until, I believe, 2022. Like, they just recently took those things away. Older Chanel bags are supposed to have a serial number, and generally people really like having the serial number and the authenticity card. I personally do, because I like dating my bags. I like seeing what era they're from. But the bags with the fabric lining, the stickers did not stick to them very well. So if you have a bag with a fabric lining and the sticker is not there, it's not that the bag is necessarily fake, it's not that the bag is in poor condition, it's just that those stickers did not stick well to those fabric linings. So if you're looking for a bag and you are interested in one with a fabric lining, the serial number shouldn't be a make it or break it. It might be for you, it wouldn't be for me for those particular bags, just because I know that the fabric lining, the stickers didn't stick very well, and so they were prone to falling off. That being said, when you are buying a vintage Chanel bag, you do want to also keep in mind what you want to come with the bag. For instance, I have an order of what is important to me. So for instance, if I'm buying a vintage piece, first of all, I want the serial number in the bag if possible, with the exception of bags with a fabric lining. If I have a serial number, I want the serial number also to be intact so I can read it, because for me, dating the bag is important. After having the serial number, I would like the authenticity card to come with the bag as well, because they match together. It's nice to have a set, and it's nice to be able to continue to date the bag. Now, bags can have unauthentic serial numbers and they can have inauthentic authenticity cards. So having those things doesn't necessarily guarantee that the bag itself isn't authentic, but all of the serial numbers are unique in Chanel. So theoretically, if you went into a Chanel boutique and they looked up the serial number, they'd be able to identify the exact bag that you have. It is a layer of authenticity, even though it doesn't guarantee authenticity. And for collectors like myself and for many other people who like Chanel, having the authenticity card with the serial number is just part of enjoying the bag's experience. After the authenticity card, generally I would prefer the dust bag if possible. After the dust bag is the box, and after the box is the receipt. I don't need those last three things to purchase a bag. In fact, I don't even need all of those things to purchase a bag in general. I always want an intact serial number, but the authenticity card, generally I want, but it's not a deal breaker if I don't have it. The dust bag, the box, the receipt, I mean, it's cool if you can get it, but it's not a deal breaker for me, especially for older pieces, vintage pieces. You know, a box is going to be musty and old and probably falling apart. Older dust bags, like the white ones that came with vintage pieces, they have the black lettering on them, and that black lettering can actually stick to your bags and cause damage to them. We found out afterwards that the black lettering would peel off. So it's not a deal breaker if the dust bag doesn't come with the bag. It's always nice, but I don't care as much about it. But it might matter to you what it comes with, and you might also be somebody that doesn't care about the authenticity card, doesn't care about the serial number. You just want the bag, and that is totally fine. Not having those things doesn't take away from the beauty of the bag, and it shouldn't take away from your enjoyment of the bag if it doesn't come with those things and it doesn't matter to you. But just as I said before with painted bags, the authenticity card and the serial number does add to the value of the bag. So if your bag doesn't come with those things, it should be priced less than an equal bag that does come with those things. So generally, if you aren't getting this authenticity card or the serial number is not intact, you should be paying less. And that's just something to note, that if the bag is priced higher and it doesn't come with those things, I would maybe pass that by for a less expensive item, unless of course it's the bag of your dreams and everything else is perfect about it. Then, you know, of course, jump on the thing that makes you happiest. Just different things that you want to maybe note or keep in mind when purchasing it all. All that being said, none of these things necessarily have to be deal breakers for you if you don't want them to be. If you don't care that the bag is cornerware, that's fine. If you don't care that the bag has been painted, that's fine. It's really about you finding the bag for you that you can enjoy to the fullest. And price is also a factor, of course. And if you're getting a less expensive bag and you don't mind that it has a few different flaws or defects or things that somebody else might pass on by but work for you, that's great. Buying vintage and buying pre-loved really allows you to have access to a wider variety of things and a wider variety of options and at different price points. So all that being said, none of these things have to be deal breakers if you don't want them to be. These are just things that I do make note of when I'm purchasing or looking for something to purchase. Do you have your eye on a vintage Chanel piece right now, or is vintage Chanel something that you're interested in getting into? I'd love to hear about it. Or if there's another brand you'd like me to make a pre-loved buying guide on, I'd be happy to do that too. Leave your suggestions down below. I did make a buying guide on buying vintage and pre-loved Louis Vuitton bags, so I will link that for you. But if there's any other brands you'd like me to talk about, I'd be happy to do so. I hope that you enjoyed this video and found it interesting and or helpful, and thank you again to Buyee for sponsoring this video. I will leave my sign up link for Buyee down below for you. If you did like this video, please give it a like. It super duper helps the algorithm, and subscribe for more content that helps the algorithm even more. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.